Good morning. It is Bit Buddha, and we are back again with another episode of the Blacks in Cybersecurity podcast. And today we have Brett Alexander, who is a principal threat intelligence analyst, right? So he's been in the cyber industry for a while. He has a lot of experience, so we're just going to learn a bit from it, and I'll let him introduce himself as well.
Sure. Hey, good morning, everyone out there. I'm Brett Alexander Tolbert, Principal Cyber Threat Intelligence Analyst, currently operating in the energy sector. My pronouns are he, him. Pleasure to be here with everyone this morning.
Got it. And the first thing I want to start with, because I was looking at your LinkedIn, and you went to like DEF CON, right? And you went to the big the Blacks in Cyber Village, and I really want you to explain that in depth, because you're the first person from BIC who I know who has gone to DEF CON. So I wanted the other BIC members and people in general just to know about your experience at DEF CON, and especially the BIC village. How was that?
Well, so it's it's bittersweet for me because whenever I think about DEF CON now, I just think about the excruciating Las Vegas heat. And I am not like a warm weather person. I love my winter time. I love my snow.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whenever I hear DEF CON, I just think like, oh my gosh, I sweated so much. But overall, it was an incredible experience. This was my first time back at DEF CON since maybe 2017 or 2018. And I was really glad to see, I think in large part thanks to BIC and thanks to other organizations out there, the diversity has definitely changed and increased. I mean, I think the face of cyber and the diversity within cyber in general has changed since 2017, 2018, in large part thanks to things being a little bit more accessible due to the pandemic. But I was really impressed by that. I was impressed by the range of speakers that were there and all the different options you have available. I think a lot of people don't realize with some of those bigger conferences, you're not just going to listen to people talk all day, right? Like you can find your niche, you can find the lock picking, you can find all these little things that you may not be able to have, accessible to you at smaller conferences that are within the region closer to where you live, perhaps. So it was really impressive, just the way everything was sort of structured and organized. I think the Blacks in Cybersecurity group, again, did a fantastic job by just offering up different, topics of things that are, of course, cyber-centric, but a little bit different than your typical, like, oh, here's how I reverse engineered XYZ, like that stuff. It's nice to have that, but after a while, it's like I want to hear people talk about more of their personal journeys and how they navigated things in cybersecurity. That's what we don't hear enough of. So I think it was very well done. Of course, I have feedback. If the DEF CON organizers were to ask for feedback, things that could be better, and I do wish that given how expensive it is to travel to Vegas for folks that don't live in the area and to stay there, especially those newer to the field or, cybersecurity college students, right, that would really, I think, benefit from just some of the exposure you can get and some of the networking you can do at conferences like that.
Right.
I do wish that there were sort of more regional DEF CON like opportunities throughout the country so more people in those positions could benefit from those opportunities. But overall, it was a good time. Just I needed to cool down a little bit out there.
Yeah. No, it definitely looked very excited. The part you spoke about their personal journeys, because it's cool people go to super deep into like the reverse engineering and the binary exploitation and all this fancy stuff, right? But then the personal journeys, I feel like that hits people's hearts more so. I mean, both could hit people's hearts, but if you talk about I was here and then I had to do all of this and then I waited outside, just feeling the things you've overcome, I feel like it's definitely a beautiful and inspiring thing. And I feel like in the future, I think we should see more of that, because I feel like the more diverse it gets, the more stories we could hear, because everyone has a different story. So that's definitely beautiful. And so if there was one speaker, right, from the Blacks in Cyber Village, right, or one talk from it that you feel like is a highlight that I have to, because honestly, I might go back on the YouTube, because they're posting them on YouTube now. I might go back and watch all of them. But if there's one talk of you have to watch this talk, you have to watch the speaker, who would it be?
Oh, well, so, my mentors would say this is the part where I do some self promotion, right? But I'm not going to do that. No, I think I would give it up to he's kind of, I guess there's some bias, right? My buddy Malachi Walker, who's with Domain Tools, and there was actually two talks he gave throughout the weekend at DEF CON. One was in the Maura Village, which is pretty fun, but the one he gave in the BIC Village, he kind of interplayed giving threat actors what he called rhythm and blues, right? And incorporated R&B throughout his presentation to describe and showcase how you can do some analysis around DNS, the domain name system. And I thought it was just really clever. I'm a big fan of just creative things, right? Like being really whimsical, in presentations, right? Having worked in threat intelligence, sometimes, depending on your audience, the presentations you have to give, the briefings you have to give are very like cut and dry, kind of boring, So I love when things are like really creative and fun. And the great thing about his presentation is it's not just a talk, right? Like there's an interactive component to it as well that people can follow along to learn what he's actually, speaking about. So I think, Malachi Walker, check out his talk for sure.
Yeah, and I'm definitely gonna like look him up, and also yours as well. Like I would love to hear like what was your talk about as well. Like you got to do a little bit of stuff like from like you got to like sprinkle some in there, brother.
Yeah. So my talk, this was perhaps the least technical talk I've ever given, but perhaps the one that would, cause people to be, a little upset. Perhaps it was all about bias in cybersecurity and the role bias plays in cybersecurity judgments, and a bit of a call to action to make sure that people are being objective when we recruit, how we recruit people, and then also how we analyze things. Because when you're in a room with people, say, that went to the same university, they're more likely to have, that sort of same background understanding on how to like process certain cybersecurity events or how to assess those things. And that'll affect their decision making. But if, there's bias from whatever reason from their teaching or however they learn things, they're more likely to not fully analyze something in an objective way that'll get the whole picture, get the whole view. Whereas if you had people with different backgrounds of different skill sets, you get a little bit more, a fair mix of different views and opinions, right? And folks that can speak up and raise their hand and say like, hey, something here is wrong. We're not considering this angle. And that can be detrimental over time if, that bias starts to creep into everything. So it was a big sort of exploration of bias in cybersecurity. And I paired it up to Jasmine Sullivan's Hotels from a couple of years ago. So if you're a Jasmine Sullivan fan, definitely check it out, I think.
Right. But that's a very key point. And it's a key point. I feel like it's spoken of here and there, but I feel like it's probably people don't probably understand the magnitude of it. There's a documentary I still have to watch. I saw clips of it though. It's called Decoded Bias. You probably watched that, but it was a sister who was basically like she did the whole documentary about this. How like we were making these AI stuff, but the thing is the data sets are pulling from an already bias, right? So you're creating the AI agent who's going to keep the same bias, right? And it's like it's a trip. I even remember one time I was asking, because me and my friends were doing this thing, we had like ChatGPT like draw us, right, based upon what it knows about us. So I was like, and this was last year, I was like, okay, ChatGPT, draw me based upon what you know me. So it was like, it was so funny. So like it's a room, like a laptop studying CompTIA stuff in the back, acronyms, and it's a white dude. And I'm like, okay.
Okay. I thought you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say something really bad, like the stereotypical like big nose or something like that, like they're gonna just exaggerate features, but that's crazy.
No, it wasn't the features. It was just like I was like a white dude, which is I mean, I didn't really tell it my racial background, so that's fair, right? But if you don't define what you are by default, the way it's programmed, it thinks you're probably a white man, right? Just based upon the basic template. And it's something that's I didn't even know how to reverse it. I think just bringing awareness to it is important, but that's definitely a key point. And I know as well, you saying that you are a like educator and a speaker outside of it, because it seems that you kind of have experience just doing this stuff in general. So I would love to hear more about your teaching and your other speaking that you have done in the past as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So last January 2024 was
Mm,
an interesting and also nerve-wracking time because that was my first opportunity sort of get sort of widespread stage exposure, if you will. I had a chance to
mm.
speak at SANS's 2024 Cyber Threat Intelligence Summit. Um, that
Wow.
was pretty
Cool.
fun, but again, I was incredibly nervous, right? And I think looking back, I think I've probably come a long way since then. But then
Mm,
also that month, I started as an adjunct instructor at Bowie State University. Shout out to the Bulldogs out there. Um,
mm,
and I was teaching a class. I can't remember. I think it was just called Computer and Network Security. It's pretty much like a security plus boot camp class,
cool.
which I
Solid.
would argue is really unfortunate for the university to levy the stress on students. They have so much going on already to try to set them up to take the Security Plus readily after taking that class. And Security Plus is just so
Mm,
much content, so it's kind of difficult.
it is.
But yeah, I started teaching that January, and since then, I've taught an incident response and digital forensics class. I know we talked earlier, like that's the class I'm teaching now as well. Um,
Mm,
I think it's really important. We have so many, really smart people in cybersecurity. It's really important to
yeah.
definitely, if you walk into a space, walk into a house, right? However awkwardly you come into that house, whether it's normally through the
Mm,
front door or whether it's going through a window, whatever the case may be, the whole that sort of entry point open for others behind you. It's something that I think my generation has increasingly articulated that we felt like we didn't always have, and we had to sort of magically create that entry point or lockpick our ways into certain
literally.
spaces.
Literally.
Um, so
Literally.
I
Yeah.
think it's important to do that, and I think that's the thing that keeps me moving, keeps me motivated. At the end of the day, of course, it's time consuming, balancing, being a professional, being an educator, being everything else, right? A good friend, a good partner, like all these things as well.
Mm,
But it's really important, right, that we sort of lay that foundation for folks to follow us in our path. Um, and
yes.
then some other things, me and my good buddy Abdul Williams, we spoke at MITRE's AttackCon last fall. I called it our love letter to attack. It was a pretty fun talk, just talking about the MITRE ATT&CK framework's evolution, if you will,
Mm,
and how it's influenced both cyber threat intelligence and detection engineering practices. So that one was pretty fun. And also had the chance to go to the Blacks in Cyber Winter Conference back in February of this year. And there I did a brief talk on like threat hunting infrastructure in the wild. So um, public speaking a couple of years ago for me is one of those areas that I said, Brett, you have to get better in this space. And I think
mm.
having sort of being put in the space as an educator and then trying to pursue some of these opportunities when they come up has definitely helped out. So I'm happy to
Mm.
again give back to myself, but then also find ways to give back to others from that as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's like a beautiful like story. And when you were speaking about the way you get into the building, whether it's to the front door, the back door, the window, the sewer, whatever, regardless of how you get in, making sure you open spaces for people who come after you. And I feel like that's such a key thing because a lot of these spaces like are spaces that a lot of demographics never even had to touch, like never even they don't even probably know it
Hmm.
exist,
Yep.
literally, right? And it's funny because it's funny and it's beautiful because I feel like it's even if you're not in cyber, it's almost like the way you have to think about these organizations. It's like you're a penetration tester. It's like you got to think about like, do I enter this way? Do I message this person? Do I email or this event? I shake this hand. Like you got to think about how do I get inside there. Once you're inside there, you got to think about how to open this door for other people. So it's a rough journey, but it's a beautiful journey because it's like trailblazing in a sense. You're going on a path that not a lot of well now it's getting gradually better, but still we still have a lot of other people who don't even know these spaces exist. So I'm definitely proud of you for just like sharing and teaching more because I think that's the way to help a lot of people as well. Because even if they don't have the time or energy to like look into like a Sec Plus or like this
Yep.
organization or they can't travel to a DEF CON, right? At least they could like learn online now,
Yep.
right? They could like hear about it and just know it's possible. So that's definitely beautiful. And I wanted to ask you more about just some incident response in general. Because like so from my perspective and view of it, it's very
Right.
small, right? From the incident response people I've heard of, it's like, oh man, there's like these alerts all the time, and this factory's burning down, and this factory's burning down, and like I'm on call. Blah, blah, blah. It's like it's like from what I heard, it's like all the time, 24/7 stressful cyber work, right? But from your experience, is it always that? And if not so, like what else can it be?
Oh my goodness. All right, so let me try to be as objective as possible. It the unfortunate answer is I hate this answer, but it depends. And that's the best accurate
Okay.
representation I can give you. So
Okay.
I'll tell an anecdote. When I first started my career, I was working in the U.S. government, and the position I was in was like a 24/7 security operations center esque position, but not your
Mhm.
typical security operations center. Given again, it was working in the U.S. government, and
Mhm.
you know, I would say that the work there was slow. It wasn't that typical, like, oh my gosh,
Okay.
the building's burning down. Like, again, someone's knocking at the door. We have to respond to all these things. It wasn't quite that. However,
Yeah.
in other environments I've worked in, definitely in the private sector, where cybersecurity best practices just aren't implemented, or the organization just is
Mhm.
not as mature as, other organizations. I find that
Right.
sectors that are, for example, regulated, right, like financial services, and
Yeah.
things where like any of the critical infrastructure sectors, right, if they have good investments into cybersecurity, more than likely the security operations there are not going to be as intense. It'll probably still be lots of alerts, and there probably is fatigue because like, okay, more than likely this is a false positive, right? Um,
Right.
but in those environments that have the good investment, when there is an actual incident, it is hair on fire because more than likely a lot of those folks haven't been exposed to an actual incident because it just hasn't happened. Um,
Right. Right.
but then
Right.
when you work in that environment where there isn't the cybersecurity maturity is low, then what you described isn't an accurate depiction because there's always alerts, there's always something going on, there's always lots of self-inflicted wounds, misconfigurations, public-facing things that have vulnerabilities that haven't been patched, just things that we could be doing as an organization perhaps better, that the
Mhm.
organization either doesn't have the resources with regards to
Right.
time or with people. And all those things just open up more wounds for the poor incident responders to have to quickly
Right.
pivot off and address so many different things so quickly and run really hard on caffeine and energy drinks and whatnot. So it is really tough, especially again, like some security operations center SOC teams and incident response teams may have like a 24/7 posture where there's like say a day shift, a night shift, and a swing or mid shift.
Yeah.
Some may do like 6 hour rotations instead of the eight. But if there are companies that again can't afford to have that many people on staff, then you have a smaller team that maybe they work what's supposed to be 8 hour days, but then that turns into 10.5 hour days. And then they're the people that are technically on call on the weekends, and that's
Yeah.
incredibly brutal. I will say, I do think I don't wanna say everyone should do that for a brief period in their cybersecurity career, but I do think you get exposure and you learn a lot having gone through that, and
Yeah.
you learn a lot about
Yeah.
yourself, how you protect your boundaries, how you bounce back from, all these different types of stressors. Um, so it can be really challenging, but also rewarding at the same pace, even though you could be in one of those organizations that is really mature, but you never get that exposure. You never really see an incident. You never work on the network while an APT is on the network. So it can be it can be a lot to juggle, but I don't think it's always like that. It really just it depends on where you're
Yeah.
working and what their practices are.
Wow. And like I love that you explain like all the factors because now that you explain it, it's like yeah, there are a lot of factors, and it makes me think about this quote. They say the soldier who sweats the most during training bleeds the least during war, right? So it kind of makes me think about what you say. Like it's a lot of factors to it. Like whether you're a small organization, a big organization, whether you're public, whether you're private, whether you've been through this before, whether you've not been through this before. So there's a lot of different factors. And like the thing I learned, especially the more cyber people I speak to, it's not like one shoe fits
Mm,
all, right? Because even in the same
yep.
company, you could have a drastically different experience to your teammate who's on the same exact team,
Yes.
right? Even in the same
Yes.
team, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into it,
I love
definitely.
that quote. It reminds me of I'm a big tennis fan, and Coco Golf. You know, I remember a couple years ago, one of her coaches was saying that she always has this mindset that she wants to make practice as grueling, as an impossible as can be, because she feels like if she goes through the worst during practice, then every
Yes.
match she actually plays that matters can't be the worst, right? Like, you know, she can only go up from there, right? So I think there's definitely something in that mindset, right? To be able to, you know, be well prepared for different types of things and sort of expect the worst, but you know, hopefully you don't have to encounter that and just keep that experience in your back pocket.
Exactly, exactly. And yeah, speaking about tennis, so you said that you're into tennis, but what are some other like hobbies or like? Because I know right now it's like football season, so everybody
Ah,
is like,
yeah,
oh, like all football, football,
yes.
football. But I'm like, what other like hobbies or like interests do you have? So say if you had like a week, I always ask this. Say if you had like a week free, right? All bills paid, all groceries bought, all of that is clear, right? You have a week, you don't gotta no clock in, no both family and work, all of that is like erased, paused for a week, right? What are you doing with your
Oh
time?
goodness, that's I love that question because but it also makes me a little sad because I'm like I will probably never get that for the next 30 plus years, right? But you know, I'm looking around like in this my office, right, and I see a couple of things, right, that
Yeah.
would sort of dictate probably what that week would be full of. One,
Mm.
books. I love nonfiction. Excuse me, I love fiction
Yeah.
books, preferably
Yeah.
yeah, crime thrillers, mystery.
Yeah.
I've always been like a big reader. My mom and I
Yeah.
exchange books. She's gotten in this habit now of
Oh, cool.
putting her little tag on her books that she owns, like, "Oh, this is from the personal library of such," and I'm like, "Okay,
That's
that's
so cute.
funny. That's funny. Now, you know, you can give me my books back. How about that?" Um, but no, definitely, I've always thought that if I had like 24 hours in a day,
Yeah.
right, where I didn't have any responsibilities, 8 hours would be
Mm.
just reading a book, you know, with a cup of tea, honestly, in a corner somewhere, preferably where it's not, you know, 60 degrees outside, you know, 60 and lower for
Yeah.
me. Um,
Yeah.
the other 8 hours is just listening and discovering music. Um, I
Wow.
think
Cool.
streaming services has killed a lot of the experience of being like really, you know,
Agreed.
having anticipation for artists when they drop music and whatnot. And nowadays, I just can't keep up with all the different types of
Yes.
artists out there.
Yes.
So I think just a large period of time just spent discovering music, right, and different artists and just really listening to it and sort of cogitating all the things that they're expressing and saying in the different songs and whatnot. That would be fun for me. And I guess part of that too could be like concert going as well. I love going to concerts, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things now, right? As you know, we talked about splitting your time in so many different ways. Like
Yeah.
concerts are most likely at night, and then it's a gamble of like, okay, if I go to this at night, I'm gonna be tired tomorrow, and like
You're tired.
it's like this whole
Yeah.
thing, right? Um,
You're right.
and I think the other last 8 hours is just being in the kitchen. I love being in the
Really?
kitchen.
Oh,
It
cool.
evokes
Sweet.
lots of like good nostalgia from childhood of like, you know, seeing my mom and my
Yeah.
grandmother in the kitchen from like, you know, 11 a.m. to like 4 p.m., right? Just cooking and talking and playing music, just lots of good memories that way. So I love baking. I love trying to bake new things, even though baking is so scientific sometimes that I'd rather
Mm.
just be more creative and cook some things. I think you get away with things a little bit
Yeah.
more cooking, but trying
Yeah.
out new recipes and you know trying to build my own sort of repertoire of recipes I would be
Yeah.
that other 8 hours. If we're talking about you know expenses aren't a concern at all, then I would
Oh, not at
say
all.
I would say I would throw in traveling. I love traveling, but of course that comes
Of
with
course. Yeah.
expenses.
Definitely.
But I'd
Yeah.
love to get to a point where I can travel alongside a calendar of tennis events because again I love tennis
Mm.
I've been to tennis tournaments before, but there are some just periods throughout the year where it's like, okay, I would love to go to just these three tournaments back to back, right? It may be in different cities, sometimes they could be in different countries. I would just love to do
Mm.
that back to back and sort of travel,
That's
enjoy
cool.
the travel and experience of soaking in some new culture, perhaps I haven't experienced before, and new foods as well, right? I think
Yeah.
that would be if expenses weren't a thing or money wasn't a thing, that would be something too for sure.
But that's a beautiful response. So we got like the books, the music, the concerts, like the cooking, the traveling. That sounds lit. Like, I think everybody watching this was like, that sounds like a good time. So no, that's definitely beautiful. And what else? Oh, so we got to speak about this. So I was looking at your LinkedIn,
Uh,
right, and you have
yes,
Pokemaster, right? So we definitely got to speak about Pokemon more because Pokemon is literally like my entire childhood was just like Pokemon.
I
So
see
speak
my
about
little
that
plushy
a little bit.
Umbreon is like staring down at me from my bookshelf over
Oh,
here, so that's making me happy.
that's so cool.
Oh man.
No, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
I love Pokemon growing up. Again, I was into lots of things where, imagination, I don't say it was required, but also it just takes you somewhere else. That was one of the reasons, bless you, one of the reasons why
Yeah,
I loved reading and loved fiction, even from childhood. And Pokemon was just one of those things that stuck with me. And I think
yeah,
having looking back, like if you rewatch the anime as an adult, like there's so many great lessons learned from Pokemon, like
right,
perseverance, right?
yeah,
Battling doubt and self-doubt and just so many different things that as an adult I think you appreciate, but as a kid, like you just don't pay into it too much. But I think with the games for me, it was just always fun. Again, being creative, building your different teams, and seeing
right.
the evolutions of the games as I grew up, right? Because I think my age was like I was born at the right time to see the progressions of the games, right? And there came a point in my life where I just stopped playing them, and then I had to go back and replay, even though they've been doing a decent job of sort of rebranding the games for the newer platforms now. So I feel like I
Right,
haven't
right.
really missed too much. But there's just so many, I feel like, things you can learn from Pokemon, and there's something comforting in the methodology of how the games essentially were crafted, right? You catch
Mm.
your Pokemon, you go challenge the gyms, you go on, continue your journey. There's just something very structured about it that really just, I don't know, comforts my mind. And I think
Yeah.
when they started to go into the open world concept, I know one of my close
Uh,
friends, Monique, like she hates that. She's like, I don't understand this. I like the, progression of just, catch my Pokemon, go to the gym, go to the next city, da 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 da.
right, right.
But having the open world concept creates a different angle for that. But yeah, I've always loved Pokemon. Again, it's been a while since I've like consistently played just because adulting, right? But
Right. Right, right, right.
but but yeah, it's definitely a great comfort. I would definitely have to fit some video game time, whether it's going to be Pokemon or
Mm.
I've been into Nexomon more recently, just because
What is
it
that?
reminds me. Nexomon, it's you can get both of the games if you have a Nintendo Switch for like $5. Um,
Mhm.
it's very reminiscent of what Pokemon was when it first came out.
Oh,
Very
gotcha.
simple, straightforward, right? But the storyline is equally as interesting. So it's kind of Pokemon
Mm.
light or esque, right? I don't think
Mm.
as a brand they'll ever be as huge, right? But
Mm.
I've enjoyed those over the last year or so.
Mm.
But I would have to fit that time in that week where I don't have any responsibilities for sure.
Mm. Wow, no, that's beautiful, and I feel like this is very. It's actually very quite like beautiful because I will say this for you and everyone else watching. One of the biggest mistakes in my life, right? I had my Nintendo Switch and my new Nintendo 3DS, right? Modded to the brim. I had all of my old games from my DS era, all of the new Switch games, right? And I remember when I was in Florida, for some reason, because I left Philly and went to Florida, for some reason, I'm like, oh, I'm like an adult now. I don't got time to play video games, right? And I gave my friend's sons my Nintendo Switch and my 3DS, right? And I kid you not, that's probably the biggest mistake I've made as an adult. Because I let what the world saw as like being cool, and I let go of what I thought, what I knew brought me joy, right? So regardless of how old you are, regardless of
Yeah.
where you're at, never let like the world dictate what you can enjoy, right? Because if you like music, tennis, Pokemon, baking, cooking, whatever it is, just make sure you keep those things and do not let your family, nor your spouse, nor the world, nor your school, don't let anyone take that from you. Okay? Especially if it's healthy, right? If it's healthy, it makes you laugh, it makes like it's fun, it's enjoyable. Don't let the world take that from you. So I'm glad you still have that, right? Because I feel like a lot, like especially as people get like older, they like lose that in a
Mm,
sense. And I'm a loop this back to cyber as well. So I heard this. I'm not sure how true it is, but I think it's true, right? But I want to hear what you think. So they said,
mm.
you know how when Pokemon Go came out, right? Firstly, when Pokemon Go came out, that was the closest to world peace I ever seen in my life. Like literally, I
Oh
was
my
in
goodness.
Philly on the streets. Everyone was
Yeah.
outside. It was like, oh, Pokemon, like it was a beautiful time. Anyway, I heard that basically either the CIA, the FBI, or Google Maps, somebody basically did that to get this whole like to basically map out cities, like this whole
Mhm, mm,
geolocation thing that they were doing because they would keep track of you. Like everyone has their GPS to keep track. But I heard that Pokemon Go gave that data to some like government organizations so they could just like map things out better. I'm not sure how true that is, but I want to know what you think about that because I think it's 85% true, but I want to hear what you think about that.
Well, first, I'll revisit what you were speaking
Yeah.
to on before, and I'll say, like,
Hmm.
I've always felt like one of the greatest comforts in life is knowing oneself, right? Because other people may see you, they may hear what you're talking about, externally, right? But there's no greater comfort than you know what brings you peace, what brings you comfort, what brings you joy, and like holding on to that and weaponizing that when you need to draw your boundaries and such. So
Hmm.
I do think that's a really valid point, like what you brought up there, and I think that's important to keep hold of those things that
Yeah.
make you happy, right? Regardless of whatever your situation is, right,
Right.
and how much time you have to invest in those things. Regarding regarding Pokemon Go, um, it's tough to talk about because when that came out, I was still working in the government, right? And um, yeah, so I mean, what I'll say is that anything that uses, location services that really relies on GPS, I always say this because, like my mom, for example, she's one of those people where she has like my sister's location, she has my nephew's location, and I'm like, if you have that, then there's a chance somebody else could have that too, right? And so it's a big risk, and I do know that there was, if we want to get like deep into the threat intelligence world, right? Like, um, foreign nations like China, right, have consistently demonstrated that, things that they manufacture in terms of hardware and software, sometimes they sneak in some extra bits, right?
Right.
And
Right.
the capabilities of those extra bits range from A to Z, and that can be used to facilitate cyber espionage, information
Ooh,
collection.
wow.
Um, we haven't seen anything resulting in like physical harm yet, like say batteries from China that just explode on people. We haven't seen
Jeez.
anything like that. But I think you have to be careful, right? And it's difficult as a consumer because no one reads all the fine lines, right? Before you click, install from the app store. No one's looking at all these little notes that happens to be in really small print that's difficult to read.
Right.
But doing your little bit due diligence to understand, more about the company that's putting the software out there, right? And what their relationships to, foreign governments may be, could
Right.
be helpful. um, but I think that same concern regarding Pokemon Go specifically, right? could be used probably for lots, or could be applied to lots of other apps and services that are
True.
out there, right?
True.
So
Well, yeah. True.
it's always a gamble, and I'm not like a super, privacy skeptic type person. Like I know there's people out there that are, oh, I would never use GPS, and they have the physical maps, in their car bundled up because they, they don't want to use it and they don't want to be lost, but they don't want to
Yeah.
use their phone for stuff like that. Um, I'm not
You got a
that type of
compass. You
person,
got a
but
compass,
like,
my man.
yeah, like seriously,
Where's Lurk at?
there are people out there that that are
Yo.
like that. And I'm like, more
Yeah.
power to you, because
Yeah.
I can't live like that. But I think it just requires caution, But I
Right.
think, unfortunately, increasingly, uh, kids, especially in the U.S., right, I think are getting technology exposed to them at younger and younger ages, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think we always do a good job of explaining like the consequences and explaining
Right.
all these things to keep in mind, right? And even when we do, people oftentimes wave it off. So I mean, especially as a kid, I mean, children aren't going to understand all that,
Right.
the complexities behind all that. So it's difficult. But I would say, I think that concern for Pokemon Go specifically could apply to so many different things.
Yeah, a lot of that.
So yeah, it's a gamble, right? Trade off.
Yeah, it definitely is a gamble because recently speaking about current news, I think Instagram what was it, like 2 weeks ago they added the whole GPS tracking your friends on Instagram thing, and Snapchat has had that for like a while, right? But now Instagram is doing that as well, and even Facebook. Every time I log on Facebook, like, hey, can we know your location? I'm like, for what? Like, why y'all think I have a location? Facebook, like, I'm not doing. It's a trip, but and especially the children part is something I ask about and I speak about so often because I feel like when you speak about children or just like when you speak about those things, I feel like it sobers up a lot of conversations because I feel like a lot of adults have conversations, but in their head they're not thinking about babies or they're not thinking about like what how is this going to affect the next generation, right? And this is like a has been an issue in tech for like a long time because like we had tech and the medical industry both we have so much advances, right? And they ask them, hey, what are the effects of this? They're like, I don't know. I'm just it's cool, it's fast, it works, we're billionaires, it's lit, right? But how is it going to affect the children down the line? Because even if you take someone, as an example, people who have been in prison for like 10, 20 years, right? 20 years ago, people were not just glued to the phone at the time. Literally today, if
Hmm.
you go any city in the
Yep.
world, majority of people are on their phones. Majority, right? And it's like that was pretty quick, right? That was pretty quick. Like, it's it's beautiful because I love technology, right? But it scares me because like I understand we understand the intricacies of it, right? They're not like because not everybody's going to go deep into like all these different protocols and all these different programming
Right.
languages. They're not going to go that deep. So, and I would think with children, I would just like to teach them how to be creators of it. Like in my head, I'm thinking like as soon as after my child could speak, they're going to learn like a programming language and Linux. I'm gonna use a Linux management day one. So when you're out in this world, right, and you're using this tech stuff, you're not just being a consumer. And I feel like that's what saddens me sometimes because I feel like a lot of people they hop on these devices just like oh TikTok all day. That's
Yeah.
you can do that, but you also can make your own stuff. You could be a creator as well. And I think that's more so what I want like to teach and show people. Like you don't have to just consume. You could create this stuff as well.
And I think too, and the other challenge with, technology, to your point, like changing so quickly, in such a short a period of time, is from the sort of professional aspect of it. The skills you learn today, 3 to 5 years from now, may not be as valuable.
Facts.
And so I think it's really challenging generationally, like some of the changes that we've seen people have to go through to adjust, right? It's not just get this certification for this thing, and oh, I'll get my couple degrees and like I'm set, right? Like that for a while, I think that formula sort of just led people to a lot of success.
Right.
Nowadays, even with a degree and even
Yeah.
with a stack of certifications, there are some that I think are, they cover a wide variety of topics, right? They're a little bit more fluid, excuse me, than others, but it's really tough. Like, 'cause you always have to be in your game. You always have to be, keeping up with everything, you always have to find ways to sort of build your profile and your persona, like who you are, what you are about.
Right.
And I think sadly, the one thing I still don't see emphasized enough in tech and cyber specifically is all of the sort of soft skills, right? The non-technical things, because regardless of what the tech is, if you can't communicate that, it's not really going to help you in the end. And I think the more we can find ways to integrate or use technology to integrate and challenge people on those soft skills, right, the better it's going to do for them just as professionally over time. Because technology, to your point, it changes so quickly. How people interact with it changed so quickly. My doctor, he's always joke. He's like, "Yeah, in a couple years from now, we're gonna have you just push your finger up to a little scanner, and it's gonna tell you all you need to know, right? Your blood pressure,
Right.
like, oh, you have this, possible tumor or something going inside you. It's crazy, just
Mhm.
how much things change. But I'm definitely concerned about it, right? Like as a part-time educator
Right.
for people entering the field, like how they'll have to balance keeping up with what's now and really soaking that in and being interested in that
Yeah.
while also recognizing that all the time and hard work you put into what's now could be, completely useless to you in a few years. So it's
Mhm.
challenging and somewhat demotivating, right? But
Mhm.
you've got to be sort of just locked in and be prepared to be locked in for a long period of time.
Wow. Yeah, it's a journey. Like honestly, it's because it's like it. I love this conversation because it's a journey that like I'm going through. So like everything is thinking about like I literally
A little too
verbatim
close for home,
like exactly. I feel it. Yeah, because I always say you need soft skills and you need software skills. And they say you need to network in terms of protocols and you need to network in terms of like people, right? And I know
Yeah.
you said that you have done a lot of speaking engagements, right? So what is like some advice? No. The first let me ask this first, and then I'll go to that one. People were just entering cyber, right? So they watch the podcast. I want to be a threat intel analyst tomorrow. Well, let's not do tomorrow. I want to be a
Yeah.
threat intel analyst in general, right? What is like the most seamless path or the most seamless way or advice that you could give them?
Oh, that's tough because it's really tough because like right now the job market is just trash. So
Right.
it's kind of hard. Like I wouldn't want to. I think one of the problems I see is that, especially over the last 5 years or so, there's been so much commercialization of cybersecurity, right? Like you have so many self-proclaimed experts, right? Which is, I'll never consider myself an expert. I'll always be an enthusiast. Um, and I think so many of these experts will say like, "Oh yeah, come watch my video, and I'll tell you how to make 150K by next year." Like
Literally.
to
That's
me,
what
the
he's in.
the reality is it doesn't work that way, right? So I
Right.
think I would tell folks a couple things. One, again, be prepared to grind, not just to get into the house, the analogy we were using earlier, but
Right.
once you're in there, be prepared to build your own furniture, be prepared to, you know, rummage through that freezer, cook your own food because
Mhm.
nothing's gonna be easy for you, right? And like
Yeah.
I think this commercialization we see of cyber really gets people like in this mindset of like, oh yeah, I just need to focus on these certifications again and I'm good, right? Like, I'm gonna get these job offers. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. I think one of the most actionable pieces of advice I can give,
Mhm.
it's some advice one of my former mentors gave me at one point. I think Issa Rae, made this more popular, like this idea of networking across, right? So
Mm.
one of the pieces of advice I was given was on one hand, you should always have up to five people, at least 3 to 5 people, that if you were given an opportunity to build your own team, to start a new function, or you're hired and you're going to build incident response team from scratch, who are those people you can turn to and say like, oh,
Mm.
I really want you on my team, right? So while you're actually preparing yourself to really understand, like, oh, I want to go into CTI or I want to go into incident response, whatever case
Mhm.
may be, look across at your peers, right? And try to identify people that are in those spaces already that you want to learn from, or people that are in the same boat with you. Because again, if you can get in and hold that door open, hold that window open, or just leave it unlocked, whatever the case may be, that's better for them and for you because you're starting to build that network of cross that you can use to really establish yourself in
No.
the field.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, it's the more the traditional networking side of things, but you want to figure out who those people that maybe you look up to that can sort of operate in that like coach, mentor capacity. And on that hand, you want to have the 3 to 5 people that if you were down and out, right? That if, for whatever reason, a company downsize, or say you're a contractor and the actual company that has the contract, they decide to kill it and you're without a job or whatever the case may be, you can't stand your manager, so you want to get a new position.
Yeah.
On that hand, should be the people that you call, they know who you are, they know your work ethic, they know what you're all about, they know your profile, and they can help you rebound quickly. So I think for me, the advice I would give to newcomers, in addition to just being prepared to grind and not expecting a handout, is build those two lists of people, solidify your relationships with those people, and be prepared to use them and also be there for them as you step into pursuing your career. It's tough, it's uncomfortable, especially if you're introverted like me, but having those people and just having them always in mind
Mm.
at a moment's notice will be much more beneficial for you while you're trying to figure out, tangibly, how do I sort of step into the field? What are the things I learned? What do I need to learn? All that stuff will come, I think. You can go watch Professor Messer videos, like whatever the case may be, and do your due diligence, right? Of course, if you're going to invest in certifications, you're putting money into that, you're putting time into that. All those things matter. I'm not saying they don't, but again, in today's market, that's just not enough because you have a ton of people that are doing the same thing. But
Mm.
really build into that network, right? Become active in things like Blacks in cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
There's minorities in cybersecurity, there's diversity, there's so many different organizations out there. Regionally, like go to a small B-sides conference if they have one in your area, right? And really start to build that network because I think that's the piece that'll hold you together throughout your career, not just when you're getting into cyber, but like throughout the rest of your career.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
that's like beautiful advice, and it makes me think about this other principle that's kind of correlated. You're saying to get 3 to 5 people who could like mentor you, three to five people you could like build something out with, and I think it's called the principle of 33, where basically they say like you should spend 33% of your time with people who are like kind of like higher or have reached more than you want to achieve. 33% of the time with people who are on the same level, and 33% of the time with people who you're giving to, right? So I think that like those like two things are correlated. So I definitely suggest that, and definitely as much events as you can. And I would say joining organizations like BIC, right? Like BIC, Diversity Cyber Council, Cyber Labs. That was the changing point in my path, right? Because a lot of I was trying, I was trying to do cyber. I was trying to get into cyber security, right? Into ethical hacking and penetration testing. No college, no bachelor's, no CompTIAs, just solo dolo. I was trying to just get in solo dolo, and then like it was rough, brother. But no, when I joined these organizations, it gives you more access because not only are you learning, you have a network of people who are passionate about the same thing, and that
Yep.
helped me a lot because like this. Shout out to all the self-taught people because in a sense, a lot of our work we do have to study alone, right? So that energy is still needed, but you sometimes need to speak to people who are interested in the same thing because if not,
Yep.
your mind could go dark really quickly, especially if you
Yep.
get really deep into certain cyber topics. Ooh, your mind can get really dark really quick. So it's definitely beautiful to go to these different events, conferences, organizations, and all of that. And this is something I definitely got to ask about. So I know we got to network with people, right? And we know that cybersecurity is getting commercialized, as you say, and it it annoys me a bit. Honestly, it annoys me a bit because even I know I'm not going to say names, but I know it's some boot camps, right? They're charging like 12K to
Oh
teach like
yeah,
very basic things I could teach someone in like a month. Literally, I could teach someone in a month, and I'm like, why y'all charging them this much? But they target people who don't know, and that's
yep,
what makes me so angry. But
yep.
in general, speaking about the question I had before, speaking engagements, because you said that you have done a lot of them. So in terms of public speaking, what is some advice you could give someone who wants to go down that path?
Mm. Yeah, I think you really have to sit back and plan things out and do things with purpose, I suppose, right? What I was talking about earlier in January 2024, the talk at Sansa CTI Summit, I admittedly, right, this is just me being transparent. I pursued that out of what's the word I'm looking for? Revenge, I guess, because I I had submitted a talk proposal at a smaller um, sector specific conference for the job I was working at the time. And the leadership at that company decided like 2 weeks before I was due to give that talk that they didn't want anyone to speak at this conference. And
Wow.
I was just so upset, right? And I guess I play up as this like, kind, innocent person, but I'm a jerk. My true nature, I'm a jerk. And I know that, right? Again, I take comfort in knowing who I am. So I said, you know what? You know what? Y'all want to do this to me? I'm just going to upstage you, right? Like, I'm just going to
Right.
go out to something big, right? And have
Yeah.
that chance to speak. And because it's not reliant on, my position here, and I'm just speaking things that I'm passionate about, right? And things, work I've done on the side, you're not gonna be able to tell me no, right? Like I know
Exactly.
I know that, right? And so that was seriously like my motivation for that first time. In addition to, of course, I had this motivation, want to get better at public speaking, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I think again, it really comes down to doing things with a purpose.
Right.
I would recommend folks check out. I've been kind of praising and practicing this for a couple years now. It's called I'm probably gonna mispronounce it. It's either Ikigai or Ichigai. It's a Japanese sort of um, technique, if you will,
Mhm.
to uh, strategically like approach, I guess, life in general, right? But the whole idea is you make four overlapping circles, kind of like a Venn diagram, but then add an additional circle. And one area is what you like to do, another area is what you're good at, another area is what pays, and another area is what the world needs. And when I did this back in, I'll say late or mid 2023, that was the thing that really sparked me to become an educator because I feel like that's kind of what the world needs, right? And I know, my skill set, my experience could probably benefit maybe someone else. I
Right.
don't know. Um, but I think at the time, I also learned from that, like, oh yeah, I probably should get better at public speaking because it's a bit of I don't say a requirement, but something that will be a mainstay in threat intelligence, regardless of how AI comes along and affects the field, regardless of changes to cloud security, like all these sort of technical changes, right? Like public speaking is always going to be there. So I think again, finding ways to align that with your purpose is really important. The biggest things in terms of pursuing public speaking, right, and those opportunities, one, you've got to do. I'm going back to Issa Rae, right? Like in Insecure, when she would talk to herself in the mirror and like sometimes hype herself up. Depending on who you are, like how confident you are. I'm not that person. Like I need the hype. I need to pump myself up a
Yeah.
lot to do that. You have to find again what works for you, right? And being prepared to, you know, talk through the nerves, right? Nerves are going to come up. It's natural. I
Mhm.
think if people give a talk and they're completely nervous, like to me, they're not human. I don't know how that happens. Um, but I think you've got to be prepared to do that. And the biggest thing, honestly, is the preparation. The CFPs, and this is just me again speaking transparently. the folks that sit on the boards to review talk proposals are not always made up of the most diverse group of people. Um, and while they should be looking at things blind based off of the abstract you provide, the
Right.
outline you provide for your talk, we know good and well if they have a name, they're gonna go on LinkedIn, go on wherever to try to figure out who you are, what you are about. So
Right.
you have to be prepared that if you get rejected the first few times, especially if you don't have a significant, public profile, right? People
Right.
don't know who you are just by saying your name or anything like that.
Mm.
Um, don't feel discouraged because 9 times out of 10 bias played into some of those the decisions.
Mm.
It's really disheartening when you go to certain conferences year over year and you see the exact same people talking, and that the conference sometimes pride themselves on all the returning speakers we have. And I'm like, but why is that? Do you mean to
Mm.
tell me there just weren't that many original new submitters that sent things in that sounded somewhat good?
Right.
Like, why is it that these same people? So
Mm.
you have to also be cognizant if you're trying to speak at a conference and you're not getting that opportunity, that there's other factors in play beyond your ability to deliver the talk. So
Right.
don't feel discouraged about that. But really just prepare yourself where possible. Try to add your unique branding or creative spin to
Mm.
things. There are some people that every single talk they give maybe like food related or overlaps with like food and whatnot. And I've seen some of those are really creative. But if
Yeah.
yours overlaps with music or Pokemon, like whatever the case
Mhm.
may be, um, try to add your creative spin to it. I don't think people are going to be really excited for, what's that? The quick, brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Like, like no one wants to hear a talk like that. It's not going to keep people engaged.
Yeah.
Um, you have to find ways to definitely interact with your audience too, and know your audience,
Mm.
because it's difficult going into something. If I know, for example, I'm talking to lots of early career professionals, right? You want to keep your jargon to
Mm.
a minimum. You want to make sure you're, giving the expanded version of acronyms and things like that. Whereas if you know you're going into a talk with people that have been in the field for over 20 years that are all incredibly technical, you have to go in and be prepared that they're going to possibly side eye you and grill you when you don't, explain things
Mm.
to their level of satisfaction, and you can just say like, whatever, goodbye.
Mm.
Um, but there's so many different things you have to keep in mind and consider
Right.
that. But for people that are interested, I will say, again, don't get discouraged if you're finding, you're not getting that opportunity. And if you ever just want to practice, it can be kind of awkward, but tell your friends, like, hey, I'm trying to, do this talk. Like, I need
Mm.
you guys to come sit on the couch and be my pretend audience, right?
Yeah.
Because it can be really uncomfortable because you don't know until you're on that stage, right? You're trying to read
Right.
people's body language, and you have the guy over here eating a sandwich, you have someone over here texting on the phone. It can be, again, discouraging, right? And it's helpful
Yeah.
to have at
Well,
least that one person in the audience that's smiling,
like
giving
that.
you some
Yeah.
good body language, and
Right. Right. Right.
that'll just encourage you and push you through.
Wow.
But so many different things to consider for sure.
Wow, well, that's like beautiful because the public speaking stuff is definitely it's a path that's very interesting because I feel like not even just public speaking, just like what they call influencers. I guess like public speakers, influencers, those roles kind of overlap here and there. But no, definitely moving in passion, as you said. No, moving in purpose, right? You have to have a purpose for the stuff you're doing, whether it's public speaking or something else. Having a purpose for it, and definitely thank you for the ikigai stuff because that's a framework I bring up so often, but I didn't know the name for it. Because I always tell people like tech in general is the first thing in life where I feel like it's something I love, it's something the world needs, and it's something the world will pay for. It was one of the first things in life that perfectly fits all of that, right? So that's why I really love it. So I definitely got to look into it more because you brought the full concept. I only had a portion of it. You brought me the full concept, so I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
earlier when you were saying you were trying to get the first speaking engagement, and out of revenge, you're like, nah, I'm gonna go to this bigger engagement. I think that that's actually beautiful because I feel like, especially we're not always going to feel good, right? There's going to be times in life where we feel like, yo, this person, they playing me, dog. Like they playing me, like they
Yes.
just don't know. And I feel like
Yes.
it's very important to channel that energy properly. And I feel like you did it the best way you can, you know? So whether you're mad at like what work, personal life, just being able to, as an adult, sit down, like, I'm angry, I'm annoyed, I'm sad, I feel disrespected right now, or something like that, right? And being able to channel it properly. Because I don't often feel like that, but sometimes I do feel like that. I'm like, do y'all not know who I am? Like, so then I gotta step out and pop out and show them as a Kendrick be telling people. But no, you definitely gotta be able to channel the energy properly. I agree with that 1,000%. But no, for the last going out, just give people any last words of advice, any like your social media events, any like links, any channels. Is like share all of your content, and give people the last bit of advice.
Oh goodness. Well, I'm not that person, right? Like following on LinkedIn, I guess that's the only sort of social media thing I got really.
Yeah.
But no, I think again, if you're wanting to learn about cybersecurity and all the different facets of cybersecurity, one of the benefits of the big commercialization is that there's so much content out there. Like
Right.
I think, of course, from a hiring perspective and a job perspective, right, and for the market, of course, it still helps to have the degree, to have certifications and whatnot, because so many systems out there will just ignore your resume if they don't pick up on those things.
Right.
So um, that's as possible. But if you have the degree, if you don't have the degree, whatever the case may be, there's just still so many avenues to learn. I would say a couple of pieces of advice, right? Like figure out how you learn. Unfortunately, we don't really understand that. I think going through elementary, middle, high school, it's not until college or till as an adult you realize, like, you know what? I can just drive in the car all day and listen to these podcasts, and I walk away with so much information and knowledge, right? Like, I don't need to be in front of a book and reading and practicing things. Like, I understand the concepts, I can apply it, I can see it, and for me personally, like, I'm not that person. I need the book and I need to have a way to practice what I'm learning, and that makes sense. And that's why I love programming, right? Because it's you can see, you can learn the logic, and then you can go off and write your own program. And it's
Right.
you learn by trial and error, and
Yeah.
I've always like learned best that way. But I think because cybersecurity requires you to be like a lifelong learner, definitely understand how it is you best take in information and retain that and find ways to implement that into however it is you're going to approach picking up new things, new concepts that not only you need today but also probably 10 to 15 years from now. And then the other thing, especially for the newcomers to the field, for sure, and I tell my students this: listen, cybersecurity is huge. There's so many different subfields and sub things to do, right? You have some people that go their career and they're in like that one sort of angle or that one part of it, and they stay in that part. They become a domain expert, a
Right.
subject matter expert in that one part, and that's fantastic, right? And then you have people that want to jump around and like learn different things, and figure out, like, one, all these different areas, right? And that's where I think conferences and groups like BIC and other things out there are really good, because you meet people that have different types of expertise. You can figure out, like, oh, that sounds interesting, or oh no, I don't think I would like that, and like figure out what those things are that you do like or would like, and sort of align them to the work you're doing or the opportunities you're looking to pursue. Because if you're not doing work, I think that aligns with your personal value and your interest and the things that are going to be, keep you up at night, but maybe in a good way, just, makes you really curious, and then it's going to be really, excuse me, really difficult over time. Excuse me. It's going to be really difficult over time to, have that same amount of passion for whatever it is you're focused on. So figure out what it is in cybersecurity that you actually like. And the answer doesn't have to be one thing. It could be several things, right? And if it is several things, you know, when you are going on job interviews and stuff, it may be really useful to ask the company you're interviewing with, are there opportunities for mobility internally, right? So you're still contributing to the company, right? But you're not locked down in one position in this one area for years and years without any flexibility to do something different.
Right.
If you know you're going to be that person that wants to bounce around and hop around to different teams and soak in that knowledge and have the chance to do different things, I think it's really important we still have, domain experts and subject
Yeah.
matter experts and whatnot. But for folks that need the diversity, that need to switch things up every once in a while, which is a lot of people, again, because cybersecurity is so huge, um, having that opportunity definitely, I think, helps. And again, having that understanding of what it is you like and how it is you like to learn, those are
Yeah.
going to be things that, regardless of how technology changes, will be better to aid you as you go through your career for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's like beautiful advice. And I know that everyone like viewing this, they will get a lot from it. And yeah, definitely appreciate you coming on, Brett. Honestly, I feel like we could go for 5 hours straight. Like I have like 10 more questions I want to ask you, but no, it's cool. We'll like stop at like an hour and 5 minutes. But also last thing, I'm gonna start plugging. So I think the next it's September now. I think the next Blacks and Cyber cohort is starting up next month, right? So if you know anybody who's like nominated, who wants to like join, learn more about cyber, just check out the Blacks and Cyber, I guess, like the page, like their website or the LinkedIn. And of course I will be sharing that as well. But yeah, just tell anybody you know, come. Like the more the like merrier. Definitely will. No, but I bet I definitely appreciate your time, brother. And yeah, thank you. And we'll catch you all next time.